Grazie di essere qui, vi prego di essere veloci nel prendere posto. La prima domanda che vorrei porre a Werner Herzog riguarda proprio i film che abbiamo visto in questi giorni. Ieri e l'altro ieri abbiamo visto gli ultimi 4 episodi di Death Row. E vedendo questi film mi sono resa conto ancora una volta, ancora di più, del fatto che il principale, il punto di partenza e il punto d'arrivo di ogni film, fin dai primissimi film, è l'analisi, la comprensione dell'animo umano. Sia che si sia sulle pendici di un vulcano o che ci troviamo nel braccio della morte, lo sguardo e il punto o l'obiettivo principale dello sguardo di Werner Herzog è proprio la comprensione dell'animo umano. Questo è stato realizzato negli anni sia, diciamo così, convenzionalmente nel cinema di finzione sia nel cinema documentario. Ecco, la mia domanda è proprio questa: come si usa il documentario e la finzione a partire da un punto così profondo di partenza?
Well, I do understand that we should talk a little bit more about documentaries and feature films. There has been quite a bit of request for going into documentary filmmaking, and you do know that I'm not an advocate of Cinéma Vérité. Cinéma Vérité is a fundamental misunderstanding, as if facts constituted truth. Facts do not constitute truth per se. It's something else, and I've always looked for something different. And I have been staging documentaries. I have been inventive in documentaries. I have done casting in documentaries. And I would like to show right away an example about casting. Can you get ready? But we won't show it immediately. I was in Antarctica and sent down there, and I had exactly 4 weeks or 5 weeks to shoot. And I had to come back with a film. There's something with a microphone that doesn't function. 1, 2, 3, this might be better. I'm standing up because otherwise I do not see you. Neither. Okay, I'll try it, but I cannot scream at you. It's a question of the sound people back there. Is it okay? Okay. So it has a lot to do with casting. It begins like that, and it's like in a feature film. I'm showing you one short excerpt of a welder that I met in Antarctica. I had to come back with a film. I had very little moments only to meet people. And I met one man in the cafeteria at McMurdo Station. I immediately liked him because I asked him, and he was a welder. And I have worked as a welder. I have worked the night shift as a young high school kid. I worked the night shift in order to earn my money for the first films that I made. And I immediately had some sort of a rapport with him. But after 5 minutes, he had to leave. He had to go back to work. And he immediately said, no, I won't be in a film. I'm not a movie star. Maybe this works better, thank you. So he said, I'm not a movie star. I'm not going to be in a film. And I had the feeling I didn't have the right contact with him yet. And all of a sudden I sensed, and you have to develop this kind of sensibility, I sensed that I should not shake his hand. When he stood up, I stood up, and I turned sideways, and he, apparently anticipating what I was going to do, I elbowed him, and he touched my elbow with his elbow, and we were in business. I said to him, in half an hour, I'm going to meet you at your shop. And so that was casting. But how I convinced him to come there was because I touched elbows. Second thing, I let him do things. He has some very unusual fingers and believes that it's a heritage from royal Inca and royal Aztec families that he has. And I wanted him to show that, and I asked him because he was very proud of that. And then I leave him alone. All of a sudden I don't ask anything anymore, and he doesn't know what to do. And moments like that, when he's lost and just frozen in a pose, all of a sudden bring the audience directly onto his side. So we start to side with him. And this is also a very, very important question for making films, not only feature films. How do you introduce your character? How do you, as an audience, create something with a person that immediately captivates you? Grazia, can we show Yes, Encounters at the End of the World? I mean, sometimes it is good just to leave your character alone, and nobody can predict what is going to happen next. And sometimes these moments are very telling and very beautiful, and I like to do things like this. But I would like to show you something else, the opening of a film, just to see how ingenious it can be to introduce your leading character. It's from Viva Zapata. What is the number? 41. It's one of my favorite films, and Marlon Brando plays Emiliano Zapata. And the way the leading character is introduced in the film is absolutely wonderful. It cannot get any better. So I would like to show you this, and then I would like to hand over questions to you.
Well, it's maybe a silly question, but since you began talking about casting, would you please talk a little bit about your involvement in acting jobs recently, like you did in Incident at Loch Ness or in Jack Reacher?
Well, Incidents of Loch Ness is just a hoax upon a hoax upon a hoax. And there was people still believe that it was my real story, but it was all scripted by Zach Penn, a fine writer and a very good director as well. And Jack Reacher, it was a specific case because they had a couple of bad guys who are yelling and fighting with their fists, and they all have big guns and they open fire very quickly. They just come in and shoot. But they needed somebody who was dangerous, who looked dangerous before he even spoke. And they tested quite a few well-known actors, and none of them was really scary without saying anything. So Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie, the producer and the star in the film, they came upon me because they had seen a film, I believe it was a film by Harmony Korine, Julian Donkey Boy. And in Julian Donkey Boy, I'm completely dysfunctional and hostile and vile and debased, and I was good at that. So, and they hired me, they paid me well for being scary, and that was all they needed. And I am frightening, and on screen I can be very frightening, and it comes very easily to me. It's not a big deal to act like that. So on camera, I can slip into a completely different persona. And why do I do it? Because I love everything that has to do with cinema. And it means directing, writing a screenplay, distributing it, editing, creating music, acting, whatever it is, I love it all. Can we have the microphone a little bit more over to that side? But wherever it is. Yeah, okay. Is the microphone there? Yeah. Please go ahead.
Hello. In the meantime, I have 3 different points. The first thing is just what you just mentioned, that I find it very impressive to feel the passion you have for your work, and also just that I have the impression that you have really trust to your actors and give them space. and just let them also have their space. And this is something very important and very precious, I think, for the work as an actor. And it's not always like this. So this is one thing I wanted to say. Or do you agree?
Well, yes, sure, I have to agree, because it took me quite a while until I found my own voice. I mean, my cinema voice, and I found it through a long procedure through documentaries where I started to speak my own commentary. Very notably in Grizzly Man, for example, very notably in Cave of Forgotten Dreams, some other films. And somehow it caught on, and I became even a guest character at the Simpsons show. Yeah, well, it sounds funny, but it's my apotheosis in American popular culture. So I took it with great respect. By the way, I did not even know that the Simpsons were moving and talking. I had seen them only in newspapers printed. I do not see much television, and I said to them, when they invited me to speak a part, I said, you are joking, because the Simpsons are not speaking, they are printed. And they couldn't believe it. They said, we are 22 years now in business. Since 22 years we are showing just the Simpsons on a weekly basis. And I said, I don't believe it. Can you send me some DVDs so that I can really verify it, and I can find out in how much the cartoon voice has to be. So they still believe I'm joking about them, but I'm not. I had no idea that they were talking. So, but back to your question, yes, you have to find your own voice. You have to find your own way to, and it's not a physical voice. It's also something that you get across on a screen. Even if your voice is not in it, your person is in what you are showing on screen, in a way. The caliber of a person is always visible on screen in some form or the other.
I would have two other questions. May I keep on going just fast? The second one is recording what you said, that it doesn't matter anymore if we shoot now a film on 35 or in digital. But what I'm wondering is about the time you spend. Like, then when you're on video, you don't have the rushes in the evening. I mean, do you give your work as much time that you did when you work with 35 millimeters, for example, or do you think also the rhythm has changed when you work?
Well, it doesn't really matter whether I'm shooting on celluloid. I still try to film on celluloid as long as I can. Certain films I cannot shoot on celluloid, like Death Row. I have to roll the camera for 50 minutes because it's all the time I have. Or in Antarctica, I cannot use celluloid because it's so cold that the celluloid, the film itself, does not bend properly anymore, and it breaks like uncooked spaghetti. So you would need a lot of crew members to keep your film warm. So of course then it's prohibitive. Shooting in 3D, you can do it only digitally. So I switch over into digital. And each film takes the time it needs, but sometimes there are constrictions. The cave film, I was allowed 6 days of shooting, but only 4 hours per day. I was only allowed 3 people with me. I was only allowed to move along a 60 centimeter wide metal walkway. I was only allowed to use some small, little bit larger than this here, 2 light panels that had to be moved. Nothing else. And so, of course, you have to live with it, and you shoot the film then in 6 days, in 4 hours, work days. Why, on Death Row, you have 50 minutes, 50 minutes, and you have to do most of the film, the central piece in these 50 minutes. And you have to learn how to cope with it. But each film takes its appropriate time. In fact, today I'm working much faster than before. I've always written very fast. I've never written more than 5 days on a screenplay because I see an entire film as if I were sitting in a projection and I just write down what they talk and what they do. Editing, I'm much faster today because with digital editing, I can edit as fast as I can think almost. So Grizzly Man was edited in 9 days. My Son, What Have You Done was edited in 5 days, a feature film. Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans was edited. I delivered the final film 3 weeks after I finished shooting. So it goes quickly. And filming itself, I do not spend much time. I do the essentials, and everybody is nervous on the set here. On the film set of Bad Lieutenant, I was asked here, why don't you shoot coverage? I took my assistant to the side and said, what do they mean by coverage? I have coverage for my car, liability if my passenger is injured and he's covered up to $250,000 of bodily damage. So what is coverage? And he said, yeah, it's a shot from here, in the shot ultra close on the eyes, in the shot from a Zeppelin, in the shot this, in the shot. And I said, I don't need it. I shoot what I need for the screen. And normally my shooting days were over at 2 p.m., at 3 p.m., not one single hour overtime, never, not 1 hour. And on the second day when I was shooting and everybody was complaining about coverage, Nicolas Cage all of a sudden asked for silence. He said, silence, can I say something? And I said, Nicolas, go ahead. And he said to everyone, to the crew that assembled, he said to them, finally somebody who knows what he's doing. And then walked away. And I felt very proud of that, yes. So it somehow silenced the kind of fear. And there's always fear on a set. And can I extend your question? I'm going beyond your question, but I would like to say it. You have to take control of your set. Whatever you do, you have to take control, which means, in my case, wherever the camera is the center of everything, even if the camera is not rolling and we are setting lights in. So no walkie-talkies within 30 meters. Of course, you need walkie-talkies to call the truck and bring in tracks for a dolly. No cell phones. There are no cell phones. If you make a cell phone call, you have to move 100 meters away from wherever the camera is located. That's always the epicenter. So all of a sudden you have a very focused set. And I've seen sets like Jack Reacher where you have 240 people on the set. 20 of them are working. 220 are sitting around and everyone on the cell phone. Everyone. Not one who is not on a cell phone. So, but if it had been my set, I would have asked them 100 meters away. And for example, it's a very, very dangerous thing to have the so-called video village or video output so that everybody can see what you are filming. Avoid it, shut it down, throw it into the next river, and just do your filming and make people focus on what is going on. You have an actor who is working and acting as close as from me to the first row here, or even closer. And people who are that close, they all stare at a monitor. And it gives a very false, very strange feel good feeling of security. And it does not function. It's always very, very, very misleading. So you have to avoid it. In my case, I personally always do the slate board, because I want to be the last one to move out between the actors on one side and the technical apparatus on the other side. That means camera, sound, lights, dolly, whatever there is. So I'm the last one who moves out, and then things are rolling. So it's a very, very important thing that you don't have to be a dictator. Everybody will understand that there shouldn't be cell phone calls while you are filming or while you are preparing. Everybody will understand it. There's nothing capricious about it. So it's very, very essential how you do it from day one on.
Can I just last question?
Yes.
Thank you. This is a question I wanted to ask you from the first moment I saw Grizzly Man in theaters. And it is connected to the issue of intimacy. That is a central fil rouge in your cinema. What is the moment where you decide that, and in Grizzly Man it happens when you are hearing the tape, that you stop? I think it's very interesting how you related intimacy and power. Thanks.
Well, it's an essential, fundamental question of filmmaking. You have to settle your ethical boundaries way before you start shooting. In this case, Grizzly Man, it was known to the media and the general public that there was a videotape of the last 6 minutes of when Timothy Treadwell and his girlfriend were attacked and eaten by a bear. And it was actually only the audio, because the attack came so violently that apparently the girlfriend of Treadwell, Amy Huguenard, switched on the camera, had no time to take the lens cap off it, and she dropped the camera inside the tent, and it was found inside a crushed tent. Everybody insisted that I had to show this, make it available for audiences. Everybody wanted me to address it. I said, I have no idea what's on this tape. And in order to satisfy your needs, I can film myself listening to it, but you only see me from behind. And you see the face of the woman who owns this tape now and was a very close friend of and collaborator of Timothy Treadwell. Now, what I heard was so horrifying that it was clear only over my dead body I would make it public, because there's a dignity that must not be touched, and it's the dignity of a person's death, and it's also the privacy of death, and you just don't touch it. So, but you have to make up your mind beforehand. You cannot. Those things take time, and they take experience in life. And you should rather gain experience in life. And you will. I advise everybody who is going into filmmaking: don't spend your time in film schools. If you travel on foot for 4 months, it's better than 4 years in film school. And you really have somehow understood what the world is all about. So it's experience, it's many other things. Reading, for example, read a lot, and it gives you different perspectives, different. You enter in a different way of thinking and experiencing. So that's another thing. Or doing essential things like raising children, for example, is something which is kind of essential. And those who have done it are normally better grounded in reality, and you have to. Otherwise, it's not going to function. Whoever. The microphone has to decide where to go. Where's a young lady with a microphone? Just go ahead. Yeah, there's a young man here in Sweden.
So just 2 questions about documentary again. You were talking about the writing process that takes 5 days. It's also for documentary that you write screenplays beforehand?
No, I don't write for documentaries.
Not at all.
Sometimes I do it for if I have to win over the finances of a TV station, for example. Then I would grudgingly write 5 pages an expose, but I never I never really follow what I've written. It only is fraudulent. It's forgery, and it has a certain purpose.
And the other question, do you show the rushes to your protagonist in documentary or not at all? The images during the process?
No, in a documentary it's even worse. Never show anything to anyone in a documentary. They will become self-conscious, and they will freak out, and they will think, oh, the light on me was bad, and my hairdo was not good enough, and my God, I spoke too fast, or my God, and so never, ever, ever do that. And if you have to work with a man like Kinski, never show him a second of the footage, because he's gonna completely freak out. Yes.
Hello. How do you choose a subject to make a movie, especially in a documentary? How do you challenge and which movie you need to make still?
Well, I've never had a career. I never had a life where I would make a choice. In thinking, what do I do next? They come wildly at me. Most of the time, the projects stumble into me. And a very good example would be Grizzly Man. I was at a producer's office who was very kind with me, helped me finding some partners, and I had never met him before in my life. And I paid him a visit at his office, which was only 15 minutes away from where I live. And he showed me his facilities. We sat at the table, and I had some 10 minutes of friendly talk with him. And when I got up, and I swear to God, I was not looking for a movie, not for a subject of a movie. I noticed that my car keys were somewhere on the table. I had misplaced them. And I look at the table, and I look for my car keys. I was not looking for a movie. I was looking for my car keys. And he thought that I spotted something on this messy table and shoves a paper across and says, read this. We are doing a very interesting film. So normally I do not read that stuff, but I went home, read it, and 10 minutes later I was back. It was clear, this is big. This is so big that I have to try to do this. So I asked cautiously, how far is the film? Yeah, they have to start in 10 days because the salmon run had already begun in the rivers, and the bear population, the density is enormously high at that time. And then finally I asked, and you have to listen very carefully now, I asked who is directing the film. And he said, I'm kind of directing the movie. But he said, kind of. And I knew he was not very sure. And I mustered my worst German accent that I could. And I pumped my hand towards him, and I said to him, no, I will direct this movie now. And he was so stunned that he grabbed my hand, and I said, we are in business now. I'm doing it now. And I did it. So, in other words, very often the films are just coming at me wildly, and I deal with the ones that come with the most vehemence at me. And only when there's something really vehement, I do it, including the film that I'm going to show tomorrow as well, from 1 second to the next. I was invited to do it by AT&T, a telephone provider in the States. And it's about texting and driving and catastrophic accidents that happen. And I said, yes, I would like to do it because there is a shift in civilization which is massive. Something vehement is happening, which means when you look at the schoolyard, the teenage girls are sitting around, they can speak easily to each other, and they're all texting. And you see people in restaurants, families in restaurants, the children and the parents, they're all texting. They do not speak to each other, they text. And there was one case, for example, where a young man I couldn't film him because prison authorities did not allow me. A young man texted and was distracted, looked down and hits a bicycle and kills a young boy on a bicycle. And now comes this, and this is a real shift in paradigm. He was texting to his girlfriend, who was sitting next to him in the same car. So, and I understood that there is something of enormous magnitude, something of enormous consequences coming at us. And I said, yes, I'll tackle it. It was just sheer curiosity because of the magnitude, what we can observe right now. Okay, Dinara.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to ask you, I'm here.
Where are you?
I'm here. I'm here. Up here.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Okay.
I see you now. So
We finally get you. Okay. Yesterday night we saw Feldman, and you didn't show the defense. In the other three film, we could also have the expression of the defense. In Feldman, you didn't.
yes, there was a defense attorney. It's an African-American lady who is a defense attorney for him.
And you didn't have the opportunity to...
I always have a defensive voice.
Okay.
In my films, I do believe there was one voice speaking for him. But in some cases, when a perpetrator admits proudly that he killed 2 truckers, you mean that case?
Yes.
So if he proudly admits it, and there are even video footage of his second killing, there's no doubt that he that he's guilty. He shouldn't be executed. That's another side of the story. But even in this case, I would have one voice speaking in his defense.
Okay. And otherwise, I would like to thank you for all your work. I follow you since the beginning of the 70s, and it meant a lot to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, very kind of you.
And one more thing. This, I want to say it in Italian. Grazie al nuovo direttore del festival che ci ha portato finalmente Herzog a Locarno.
And I would like to extend what you said to Grazia Paganelli, who has tirelessly worked for many years in Torino at the Museo di Cinema. And we have to watch out because it is on the most endangered list. If we do not pay attention and if we are not supporting this most wonderful museum of cinema, it may disappear. So, and I thank Grazia a lot for what she has done. I would like to, before we go into more questions, I would like to show you a segment from Bells of the Deep. Again, casting. I choose a Jesus Christ in Siberia. There were about 104 Jesuses roaming Siberia. And this one I liked most. And what is beautiful about him, of course, is his outlook. He used to be a corrupt policeman and gave it up and became a painter. Very interesting painter, by the way. Gave that up and he found his calling and he believes that he's Jesus Christ. And he walks in his regular costume. And I said, I would like to have him outside this is the Yenisei River in Siberia. And he said, why do you want to put me there? And I said, it has to look like the Lake of Galilee. And he said, I understand you as an artist. And he was very proud that I took him. How I bring in the music. There's wonderful music which I had before I shot the film. I had the music already. And it's Orthodox church choir. And there's one voice, the leading voice is a basso profundo, which is one octave lower in pitch than a regular bass basso. And watch how I bring in the music. It's very, very interesting. And with the music and with his blessing and with his gaze, I show Ice Skater. There was we drove by in a bus with a team, and I stopped the bus because I saw something very beautiful. People who had drilled holes in the ice and were fishing. And to me, they all looked like pilgrims. It's a film about religion and superstition in Russia. And because of the music and because of the way I film them, they are pilgrims now. They transform into pilgrims. It's very mysterious how it functions. And then I saw an ice skater, and he was very fast, and I waved him, he wouldn't follow. Then I whistled at him, he wouldn't pay attention. Then I pretended that I had broken through the ice and needed help. All of a sudden he came and looked out whether he had to fish me out of the ice-cold water. And I said to him, "Sir, I would like to have you in the film." He said, "Fine, yes, okay, I'm a good ice skater." And I filmed it 6 times over, because he was so proud and so fast that I knew it would not fit with the rhythm of the music, which I didn't have with me, but I had it in my ear. And then a second ice skater joined. And after 5 times shooting, I said to them, "Gentlemen, this is still not right. You have to do it in a different way. You're not ice skating anymore. You have to be majestic. That's how you move." And the skater said to me, we have understood you. So, and it's staged and repeated and repeated and repeated until the rhythm of the movement was right. I would like to show the clip from Bells from the Deep. Yes, it's a good example how you stage and how you direct cinema, and I mean documentary cinema. And I've heard it so often. Not long ago, in a big conference at a festival, where there was a panel, and I was on the panel, and about 300-400 filmmakers in the theater, and they were all raving about Cinéma Vérité, and that young filmmaker, young woman sitting next to me was exuberant about how she made her film, that she was only like a fly on the wall and would never interfere. And I thought, oh my God, I cannot take this any longer. And I finally grabbed the microphone and I said very loudly, I said, "No, we should not be the flies on the wall. We should be the hornets that sting. We have to be directors. We have to be storytellers. We have to make documentaries on a different level." And then there was a lot of, angry voices in the audience. And everybody was somehow murmuring or shouting or whatever. And I grabbed the microphone again and I yelled out to them, "Happy New Year's, losers." So, and so what I'd like to encourage you, you have to be directors of your movie. Found the largest rooster on God's wide earth, together with Errol Morris, who was fascinated by gigantic roosters. And there was one rooster that his name was Ralph, and he was dangerous and gigantic, and he would constantly attack. And the owner of Ralph could only defend himself with a plastic bucket and throw himself on the rooster and then singe with a blowtorch the spurs off the rooster so he wouldn't be injured badly. And then there was an even bigger one, the offspring of Weirdo. The big rooster was Ralph, and Ralph was even more monstrous. And I had Ralph for filming, and I wanted to have the tiny midget riding on the tiniest horse in the world and being chased by the largest rooster in the world around this tree stump. And rooster, the rooster would be taller than horse and rider together. I could never film it because the owner of the horse actually wouldn't give me the horse because he thought that Fred, his horse, would look ridiculous. So I could never shoot the scene, and all of a sudden a dormant motive appears in a film like this, and music starts. You have to watch out how the music starts. And the music takes over, and it goes for 2-3 minutes or so. It's a wonderful song sung by Gaetano Veloso, which was also used by Almodovar in a film, I think, I forgot the title of the film, but a fine film that he made. And then Brad Dourif and Michael Shannon freeze. They start to look out into the camera, and they hold still until the song is over, and then the film continues. So, and everybody in the film industry would immediately call security. And if you have something really big as that and troubling as that, you have to do it. Can we show it, Grazia? So, I showed you this little clip because it's something essential what I do. And I would encourage you, if you have something completely troubling you and a very strong vision of something, even if it does not fully fit into the flow of the story, just tell it anyway. There are things, for example, in the Enigma of Caspar Hauser, where Caspar is dying, and the priest asks him, Caspar, is there anything you want to tell us? Do you want to lighten your heart? Do you have anything you would like to tell us? And Caspar says, yes, I want to tell you one story. But he says, I couldn't tell you the story because I only knew the beginning of the story. And it's actually a story that has troubled me for many, many years. It's a caravan in the desert. And the caravan stops because they have lost their way. And the leader of the caravan is blind, a Berber who is blind. And everybody sees mountains in the distance, but they are Fata Morganas. They are the figment of their fantasy. They are delirious. The only one who cannot be misled is a blind man, because he tastes the sand, and he, from the taste of the sand, he knows where they are. And then it would be a big, big story that would end up in the northern African city, somewhere in Algiers or in Casablanca or wherever. But I never got the story. I never had any idea how the story would really develop. It bothered me so much that I asked Bruno S., who played the part, listen to my story and tell us the story. And even if it's only the beginning of it, it makes sense that you tell it. So, in other words, even if you have some fantastic image or part of a story, don't bury it forever. Make it, activate it somewhere, in some context where it fits in. And all of a sudden, a film like My Son has much more texture. It has much more strangeness, and it has much more standstill and inner flow. There's one thing you have to be very, very careful about it when you do both documentaries or a feature film. There's a parallel story that happens and occurs in audiences. The audience sometimes anticipates and rushes ahead of your story. For example, when you have a romantic comedy, there's a separate story evolving in the collective body of an audience. We together hope, oh my God, the lovers have so many obstacles, and we hope that they kiss each other at the end, and they find each other, and they live ever happily. And we are far ahead of in our wishes, in our emotion. So you have to pay attention to the separate, to the second story, to the parallel story that occurs only in the audience. And if you do not understand this parallel story, if you do not develop a sense for it, you will never make a great film. That's my credo. So pay attention to what you are seeing in cinemas. Is there a parallel story? Is there a second, something else going on inside the audience collectively? And then all of a sudden you see something great evolving on a screen. I would like to take one last question because we have to clear the room fairly soon. Where's the microphone? Whoever has it should.
Here. It's about silence. This question. In many of your documentaries, when you do interviews, we have the chance to see the subject in silence. I mean, the camera is still rolling not for 3 seconds, maybe 10, 15 seconds, and the subject is just like so, relaxed, in peace, sometimes almost mesmerized. Is something that you ask before the interview to the subject, or
no, such a thing you cannot ask, but you have to sense it, and you have to have the nerve to sit there. And what I do, I'm right next to the camera. If Grazia were the lens, I sit there and I look with incredible intensity at the person and nod and look at them. It's a way how you look at somebody. How you and Errol Morris is a great master. How he sits next to it, and you just want to continue talking. And in one case, Blaine Milam, there's a homicide detective, and he's a solid Texan man, and he says, I'm 38 years on the beat in this profession. And it was a murder case where a young girl, 14 months old, was tortured and murdered in a botched exorcism in a way that is unspeakable. It's beyond all description, beyond imagination, beyond everything. And he says, my 5 colleagues, I think he says, my 5 colleagues on the crime scene, they together have 100 years of expertise. And what I saw and what they saw, I've never seen in my life, and I will never see it again. And then he falls silent. And I had the nerve to wait for, I don't know, it's at least 25 seconds, which is an eternity in cinema. And then he says briefly something and falls silent again. And you have to know that a camera will never switch off. You have to trust in your cameraman, never ever switch off, never even breathe, never move, never stir, never whisper. Just stand there and take the silence as it is. And then all of a sudden, the silence becomes something powerful. And it's completely and utterly unusual. And the network, for example, said to me, Werner, a movie has to go fast. And they did like this. So one of the executives snapping, has to go fast. Cut this whole thing out, the silence. And I said, no. And he said, why? And you know what I said as an answer? If I cut this silence out, I have lived in vain. So, and it's in now. Thank you very much.